Okay, let's get started, Rabbi. Say it's rolling already, Mark. Okay, we are on the very top of Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph at the Mishnah. A lot of ground to cover today, so let's run through this quickly. We're talking about the general idea that when a person brings a korban olah, that korban olah is, as we know, the meat is completely burnt on the mizbeach, and the hide, the pelt, goes to the kohen. But now we got to go through the details. So the Mishnah says, "Kol shelo zacha hamizbeach b'visara lo zachu kohanim ba'ora." That the general rule is that as long as the meat is kosher for the mizbeach, the kohen gets the hide. But if the meat is not kosher for the mizbeach, the kohen does not get the hide. So if something happens, like Rashi points out, if before zrikas hadam, a psul befell this animal, such as a person had in mind when he was shechting, just in his example, he had a machshav of pigul while he was shechting the animal. So the animal now, the korban is pasul. So in that situation, the kohen does not get the hide. Shenamar, and how do we know this? Olas ish, ola she'olsa le'ish. Because the Torah says it has to be an olah of a person, an ish, right? And therefore, if it's good for the bringer, so then the pelt goes to the kohen. But if it's not good for the bringer, so then the kohen does not get the hide.
So what happens to it?
So presumably, you have to, just like you have to discard the meat, right? You burn it in the Beis HaSreifa, that place of burning for discarded karbanos. The same thing would happen to the hide, presumably. Ola shenishchata shelo lishma, afal pi shelo also leba'olim or lekohanim. But here's the exception. If a korban olah was shechted shelo lishma, let's say I'm the kohen, I shechted it for a sake of a shlomim instead of a sake of an olah. So remember from the very first Mishnah in Zevachim, what's the halacha? The korban is still kosher, but the bringer has to do a redo. In other words, the korban is not pasul, so the meat can go on the mizbeach, but it's not olah l'shem ba'olav. It's not good. He's not yotzei with that korban. So therefore, the kohen does get the pelt. Now, echad olah sa'ish, ve'echad olah sa'isha, or roseim lekohanim. And by the way, when the Torah says ish, it's not making any distinction between male and female, right? So females are included in the word ish. Oros kadshim kalim leba'olim, oros kadshim kadshim lekohanim kal v'chaymer. So now we get into, up until now we've been just discussing the korban olah. Now let's talk about other korbanos. If it's kadshim kalim, like a korban shlamim, the lower level kadshim, so then just like the meat goes to the bringer, so too the hide goes to the bringer as well, not to the kohen. And what about other kadshim, like a korban chatas and a korban asham? Who does their hide go to? So there, the Mishnah says that also goes to the kohen. And how do I know this? From a kal v'chomer. Umayim olah shelo zachu b'bisar zachu ba'oro, kadshei kadshim shezachu b'bisar meinu din sheyisku ba'oran. He says, I'll make a kal v'chomer. In a case where the kohen is not entitled to the meat, such as by a korban olah because it's totally burned, he still gets the hide. Then surely in a case where the kohen is entitled to eat the meat, such as a korban chatas and a korban asham, surely the kohen is entitled to the hide as well. Ein mizbeach yochiach she'ein lo or b'chol makom. And don't present me with a counter logic as follows. Well, wait a minute. I'll show you an example of a party that is entitled to meat but does not get the hide. What party is that? The mizbeach itself. The mizbeach consumes meat but does not consume the hide by many karbanos, by most karbanos. And if that's the case, then maybe make the argument by the kohanim too, by the chatas and the asham, maybe they only get the meat and not the hide. No, says the Gemara, the mizbeach is not comparable to the kohanim, because at least we know in one instance where the kohanim do get the hide, the mizbeach never gets the hide. But when the kohanim, we see that many times they're entitled to the hide, and you never burn a hide on the mizbeach. You always have to discard the hide in some way, either give it to the owner or burn it somewhere else. So therefore, that proves to me that the mizbeach never gets the hide, but the kohanim get the hide by the korban olah. So therefore, our argument is, if they get the hide by the korban olah where they don't get the meat, then surely they should get the hide by other karbanos where they do get the meat as well. Okay, let's take a look at the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan. We have to do a lot of unpacking now of this Mishnah. So let's take a look at a brisa. Olas ish pratla olas hektish. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that when the Torah says it's got to be the olah of a person, it's excluding an ola that is hektish. Now, what does that mean, an ola that is hektish? The Gemara will explain shortly. Rabbi Yossi, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, if the ola is hektish, the hide does not go to the Kohen. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda omer prat la olas gerim. And Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda says it's coming to exclude an ola of a ger. There the Kohen does not get the pelt. Now, why should that be excluded by olas ish? Isn't a ger a person as well? So the Gemara will explain that as well. So but first explain the first part. My prat la olas hektish, amar Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, prat la ola habo'a min hamosaros. This is coming to exclude the following case. What does an olas hektish mean? It means that there's a halacha as follows. Let's say I have an animal designated as a korban asham, and I end up with a spare animal designated as a korban asham. So for example, the person who was supposed to bring the korban asham died. Or I set aside one korban animal, and the animal got lost, and so I replaced it with a replacement animal, and then I found the first animal. So I am left over with a spare korban asham animal that has no reason to be brought. So the halacha is that what you're supposed to do is let that animal graze, develop a mum, sell it so that the animal becomes chulin, the money becomes hektish, and you use that money to purchase an animal that will be brought as a korban ola. That's the halacha. So that kind of ola, the hide does not go to a kohen. That's what an olas hektish means. It means that it's an animal that had previous kedusha as a korban asham, and then was transferred to become a korban ola. In that situation, the hide does not go to the kohen. So So that's all well and good if you hold that we treat that korban ola replacement animal, right, for the spare korban asham animal, as a communal korban ola. Because a communal korban ola, the hide does not go to the kohanim. The kohen only is entitled to the hide of a personal ola. But a communal ola, the hide does not go to the kohen. I'm not sure where it goes. I don't think you have to burn it. I think maybe it just goes to the Beis HaMikdash, the hide. But it makes sense to say that the kohen is not entitled to that hide because it's a communal ola. However, elalamando amar mosaros lenidvas yachid azli ma'ikal meimar. But if you hold, and this is a machlokas in another maseches, but if you hold that such a korban ola is actually considered to be the original bringer's korban ola, and it's an individual korban, then why shouldn't the kohen get the hide in that case? Kida Omar Rava, ha'ola ola rishona, ha'chanami ha'ola ola rishona. Because Rava, addressing a different case, said that the only time that the kohen is entitled to the hide is when it is ha'ola, with the definite article, the first ola in the chain of progression. But let's say this animal became an ola because of a series of situations that led up, like in the case of the asham, where you let the original animal develop a mum, and you take the proceeds and you buy another animal. So since it's not the first animal in the process, so therefore the pasuk itself precludes a kohen from getting the hide. It's exeras hakosov.
And that animal becomes a korban sibur?
It's a machlokas whether it becomes a korban sibur or a korban yachid. It's a machlokas in another maseches. It's in Rashi says it's in maseches Temura.
I'm just curious to know what that means. In other words, I don't have any private connection to that animal.
Yeah. Exactly. In other words, it's offered. There's something called the Kayetz HaMizbeach, which we learned about in Maseches Shkalim, that when there's downtime on the Mizbeach, when like there's no activity, they would take proceeds that were donated for this purpose and continuously offer animals as a korban ola on behalf of the tzibur. Okay, so that's what this animal is, according to that opinion. Rabbi Aibo, Amar Rabbi Yanai, Prat Lamatvis Ola Lebedek Habayis. So Rabbi Aibo has a different interpretation on what a ola that is hektish means. It's not what we said before, but rather it is a person who takes an animal that was designated as an ola and declares it to be hektish to the bedek habayis, to the treasury of the temple. Now that's almost a nonsensical statement. The question is, does hektish set in on top of that ola such that I have to redeem it before I can bring it as a korban? That's the question. So lo mi bayi lamando amar kache bedek habayis tafsi midir oraisa, ela afilu lamando amar lo tafsi hani mi li basar aval or tafis. He says there's a machlokis whether that hektish statement works biblically or works only rabbinically. But everyone agrees that because the hide of that animal is not dedicated for the Mizbeach, the declaration of hektish sets in on the hide. And therefore, if I take an animal pre-designated as an ola and I declare it to be hektish, at least the hide now belongs to the temple, and therefore no longer belongs to the Kohen. And that's what a person can do. Even though maybe he has to redeem it before he brings it as an olah, but he only has to redeem the meat portion. He doesn't have to redeem the hide. The hide remains hektish. V'chein Omer Rav Nachman Omer Rabba bar Avuha prat la'olah haba min hamosaros. And Rav Nachman holds like the first opinion, which stated that an olah that is hektish refers to an animal that went through a series of redemption, right? Because originally a person had a spare asham and converted it into an olah. Amalei Rav Hamnuna Rav Nachman Keman Ke Rebbe Yehuda. So Rav Hamnuna, after hearing Rav Nachman shir about that, we said in the name of Rebbe Yehuda that an olah that is hektish, which means that it was transferred from a spare carbon asham to a carbon olah, the hide does not go to a kohen. You're telling me that that's Rebbe Yehuda's shita? Ha-hadarbe. But Rebbe Yehuda retracted in another brisa from that position. Shisha, as it says in the brisa, the Tanya Shisha l'nedava, la'ola haba min hamosaros, shelo yehu kohanim zakayin ba'ora, diver Rebbe Yehuda, that there are 6 additional pushkas for coin donations in the Beis HaMikdash that are for voluntary contributions, and one of the purposes of those 6 pushkas is to take money from the proceeds of a blemished animal that was designated as a carbon asham that is being converted into a carbon olah. And the hide of that animal, of that carbon olah, does not go to the Kohanim. That's according to Rebbe Yehuda. But then the brisa continues. Amar lo Rebbe Nechemya, Amar lo Reb Shimon, im kein bitalta midrasha shel Yehoyada HaKohen. But one second, that statement you just made, Rebbe Yehuda, is in direct contradiction to the biblical Kohen, Yehoyada HaKohen. Because what did he teach? The Tanya Zem Midrash Darash Yehoyada HaKohen, Asham Hu, Asham Asham Lashem, Kol Sheba Mishum Chatas Mishum Asham, Yilokach Bo Olos, Abasar Lashem, Or LeKohanim. Yehoyada made the following drasha. We have 2 conflicting psukim. One says that Asham La Kohen, that a carbon Asham belongs to the Kohen. Another pasuk says that carbon Asham is Lashem, belongs to God. So how do you reconcile it? So Yehoyada said this is referring to an animal that is a spare carbon asham animal that is converted into a carbon olah. Part of it goes to Hashem, meaning its meat, and part of it goes to the Kohen, meaning its hide. That's what the pasuk means. So you see that Yehoyada clearly holds that even in a case where a carbon asham was converted into a carbon olah animal, the hide goes to the Kohen. So Amar Lei Elamar b'may mokim la. So Rebbe Yehuda responded, so then how do you understand? In other words, under what circumstances does the Kohen not get the hide? So Amar Lei mukmino lei b'makdish nechasav v'chad Rebbe Yehoshua. I hold that it's referring to a case where a person sanctifies all of his assets. A person basically declares, I hereby state that everything I own become hektish. Now, as we'll see in a moment, according to Rebbe Yehoshua, what the person intends is that if he owns any livestock, then all those animals that are bringable as a carbon should be designated as his own personal carbon. But because he has declared that every component of that animal is hektish, what he means to say is only the meat of those animals shall be for the mizbeach, and the hides remain the property of the bedek habayis. And therefore, I hold that when the Torah says that sometimes a Kohen does not get the hide, it's referring to that case where a person made a sweeping declaration of his assets that everything is hektish. And therefore the hides of his sacrificial animals belong to the bedek habayis and do not go to the Kohen. Ditnan. And what am I making reference to Rebbe Yehoshua? Hamakdish nechasa v'hayu behen behemos haru'uyos legabi mizbeach zecharim unekevos. Let's say a person declares his assets to be hektish, and among his assets are perfectly fine male and female animals that are usable for karbanos. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer Zacharim Yimachru Litzarchei Olos Nekevos Yimachru Litzarchei Zivchei Shlamim Udemeim Yiplu Im Shar Nechasim LeBedek Habayis. So Rabbi Eliezer interprets the declaration as that a person wants all of his assets to go to the Bedek Habayis, to the treasury of the temple. What about those animals that are usable for karbanos? So Rabbi Eliezer says, sell those animals to other people who want to bring those animals as karbanos, and yet the proceeds go to the Bedek Habayis. But Rabbi Yoshua Omer, he disagrees. And he says, Zecharim atzmam yikarvu olos, nekevos yimachu l'tzarchei shlamim, v'yabi b'dameim olos, u'sha'ar nechasim yiplu l'Bedek Habayis. Rabbi Yeshua says, no. those animals which can be brought as karbanos ola, which is completely for Hashem, then that's the intention of the person. When he declared all of his assets hektish, he meant to say that the male animals that can be used as a korban ola should actually be brought as a korban for my sake. The female animals, since they can only be brought as a korban shlamim, right? So that's not going to be automatic, because when a person makes everything hektish, he doesn't want to retain any edible portion of the korban for himself. So sell those animals to people who want to bring a korban shlamim, and then take the proceeds and purchase male animals to bring olos for yourself, and all the rest of his assets go to the Bedek Habayis. But va'afilu Rabbi Yeshua de'amar adam cholek hekdesho hani mili basar aval or tafis. And even according to Rabbi Yeshua, who says that when you make a declaration on livestock that it is hektish, you mean for it to be brought as a korban, but you only mean for the meat to go on the mizbeach. But every other component of the animal that's not going to go on the mizbeach, you want it to remain the property of Bedek Habayis. And therefore, that's what I hold it means, that when the pasuk says that it's got to be an olas ish, there will be certain times when the hide does not go to the kohen. Now, Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer prat olas ger. Now let's go back to the first brisa that we saw, that Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that olas ha'ish excludes the ola of a convert. The hide does not go to the kohen in that case. So Omer le Rabbi Simoy bar Chilkoi la Ravina atu ger lav ishu. What does that mean? Just because it says olas ha'ish excludes a ger, isn't a ger a person? Right? I mean, how can you say that? So Amar lei prat leger shemes ve'en lo yorshim. So the answer is, of course a ger is a person. Here's what we're talking about. A ger who passes away, and he doesn't have any heirs. Because every other Jew who passes away always has heirs. But a ger who passes away can sometimes be left without any heirs at all. In that situation, the ola animal that he designated is completely ownerless. In that case, we will still bring the animal as a korban, but the kohen is not entitled to the hide. Because the Torah says that the kohen is only entitled to a hide when there's an owner, when there's a person who owns this animal. But if the owner has passed away and he has no heirs, so then the kohen does not get the hide. Tanu Rabbanan, olas ish, ainli ela olas ish, olas nashim va'avodim minayin. So then the brisa, slightly different brisa, says the Torah calls it an ola of a person, or ish is a man really. So how do you know that an ola of a woman and an ola of a servant also we say the hide goes to a kohen? Tamul Omar, or ha'ola riba. Because another pasuk calls it or ha'ola. Unconditionally, it's the hide of the ola. So regardless of who is the owner. Im kain ma tamul Omar olas ish, ola she'alsa le'ish. Prat l'shenishchata chutz lizmana v'chutz l'makoma shelo yu ha'kohanim zakoin ba'ora. So why did the Torah write olas ha'ish? To tell you that it actually has to be a kosher korban that works for the bringer. But if it doesn't work for the bringer, because it was, let's say, shechted chutz lizmanu and chutz l'makomo, so then the kohen does not get the hide. So then the brisa continues and it says, Yachol shani mar v'shenishchata shelo lishma hol v'lo also leba'olim lo yu kohanim zakoin ba'ora tamul omar or ha'ola mikol makom. So you might think that even if it was shechted shelo lishma, and therefore the bringer has to bring another animal to be yotzei his chov, so therefore you might think that the kohen there too also does not get the hide. No. The difference is, at least this animal can still be placed on the mizbeach, and that's why I have the pasuk of or ha'ola to tell you that the kohen always gets the hide, provided that the behema is still kosher to be placed on the mizbeach. Now, or ha'ola, ainli ella or ha'ola, oros kadshe kadsheminayin. So that pasuk tells me that only the kohen only gets the hide when what? When it's an ola. How do I know that other kadshe kadshim as well? So according to this Tana, it's based on a pasuk. Tamul Omar or ha'ola asher hikriv. So it says the hide of the ola that he brought as a korban. So the words that he brought as a korban are extraneous to teach you that any animal that the kohen brings as a korban, he gets the hide. Not just an ola, but other korbanos as well. Yachol shani mar ba'af kadshim kalim. So you might think that that includes even lower level kadshim like a shlamim, that the kohen should get the hide. Tamul Omar ola. Ma'ola kadshe kadshim, afkol kadshe kadshim. So that's why the Torah uses the exemplar of the ola, that it has to be just like the ola in the sense that it is kadshe kadshim. So therefore, a chatas and a nashim are included as well, but not a shlamim because it's not similar to an ola in the sense that it's kachim kalim instead of kachim. Now that's the end of the first Tana of this brisa. So I just want to point out, the first Tana of this brisa teaches me that the hides of kachim that are not ola go to the Kohen as well, based upon these psukim that we've just demonstrated. But Rabbi Yishmael is the second Tana of this brisa, and he says you don't need psukim to tell you that a Kohen is entitled to the hide of kachim. He says it's a kal v'chomer, like our Mishnah said. Rabbi Yishmael Omer or ha'ola, ainli ela ha'ola, oras kachim minayin v'dinu. Uma ola shelo zachu b'visara zachu ba'ora, kachim shezachu b'visaram eno din sheyizku ba'ora. This is exactly like our Mishnah. So this part of that part of the Mishnah goes clearly like Rabbi Yishmael. He says it's a kal v'chomer. He says, look, in a situation where the Kohen is not entitled to the meat, namely by an ola, the Torah still awards him the hide, then surely in a case of, let's say, chatas and asham, where the Kohen is permitted to eat the meat, surely the Torah will entitle him to the hide. So mizbeach yochiach shezacha bebasa v'lo zacha ba'or, mala mizbeach shekin lo zacha b'mixas, tomer bekohanim shezachu b'mixas, ol v'zachu b'mixas, zachu b'kulei. So exactly like our Mishnah had said, maybe you'll provide the counter logic, which is, well, look at the mizbeach. The mizbeach gets only the meat and doesn't get the hide, so maybe that's true by kohanim. No, the argument is that's not a good argument because the mizbeach never gets the hide, whereas at least we see a place where the kohanim explicitly do get the hide by the korban ola, and therefore it's logical to extrapolate from there that not only do they get the hide by the ola, but they also get the hide for the chatas and asham as well, since they're getting the meat anyway. So that concludes Rabbi Yishmael Shita. That's the second opinion. Now we're going to see a third opinion, which is the opinion of Rebbe. And Rebbe is of the opinion that A, you don't need a pasuk, B, you don't even need a kal v'chomer, but rather it's based on common sense that the Kohen gets the hide for all kachim. What's his argument? It's as follows. Rebbe Omer, kol atzma lo hutzrachnu elo lo or ha'ola bilvad, shebechol makom ha'or mahalech achar habasar. Rebbe says like this. He says, listen, Chevra, I don't know what you're all twisted up about. He says, it's very simple. Every other place in the Torah says that whoever gets the meat gets the hide. That's the general pattern. The only exception to that rule is by the korban ola. And that's why the Torah has to explicitly state that even though the mizbeach totally consumes the meat, nonetheless the kohanim are entitled to the hide. But everywhere else, just look at the trail of the meat. Wherever the meat goes, that's where the hide goes. And therefore, you don't need psukim, you don't need kal v'chomers. It's very straightforward. And now he demonstrates. He says, Parim hanisrafim, musirim hanisrafim, hein va'oroseim nisrafim imoim. Whenever you're dealing with communal karbanos, like a korban chatas for avodah zara or for a shogeg that's committed by the entire nation, so what's the halacha? They're totally burned, and their hide is completely burned as well, separately, off of the mizbeach. So therefore, just like you burn the meat, you burn the hide. That's the normal progression, right? Chatas va'asham v'zivchei shalmei tzibor, mantana lekohen, ratzu mafshitan osam, lo ratzu ochlin osam al gabi oran. He says, now let's look at a chatas and an asham. Who gets the meat? The kohen. Who gets the hide? The kohen. They go hand in hand. And therefore, if the kohen wants to eat the meat separately and keep the hide for himself, he can do that. Or if he wants to have a luau with a kosher animal, he can just roast the animal in its hide and eat the meat that way. In other words, the bottom line is according to Rebbe, the meat and the hide are a package deal. You just follow along wherever the meat goes, that's where the hide goes. Kachim kalim leba'olim, ratzu mafshitan osan, ratzu ochlin osan al gabi oran. Same thing as by kachim kalim. Who gets the meat? Chevra, who gets the meat by it? The bringer, right? So therefore he gets the hide. He can either separate the meat and eat it and keep the hide separately, or he can roast it at a luau and eat it together and on the skin, right? It's all his choice. The only time where the Torah says explicitly, I want you to separate the hide from the meat, is specifically by the korban ola, where it says you must dismember the animal and flay it, remove the hide. So yachalo yu kohanim zakoin ba'ora, and therefore you might have thought that the kohanim just like they don't get the meat, also do not get the hide. Tamulomar or ha'ola asher hikriv or ola asher hikriv. Period. Therefore, the Torah says the Kohen is entitled to the skin of the hide of the animal. Now, there are two other words in this pasuk that the Bryce is going to analyze that are completely superfluous, and they are at the very end of the pasuk. The Torah says, "Or ha'ola asher hikriv la kohen," that the hide of the animal that he is bringing shall be to the kohen. The last two words of that pasuk are lo yihiyah; they shall be his. Totally superfluous. So what is it coming to teach? So lo yihiyah prat litvul yom u'mechusar kippurim va'onein shalach sheyachal lo yisku bebasar shu la'achila. Yisku ba'or she'enu la'achila, tamaloimar lo yihiyah prat l'mechusar kippur mitvul yom va'onein. So the answer is it's coming to exclude any kohen whose shift is that day, who would like to say, well, you know, I would like, if he's tameh or if he's an onein, we said he does not get any portions of the meat of the karbanos that are brought on that day. So you might think he'll come forward and argue, I can understand that I can't eat the meat because I'm in a state of tumah. Or I'm in oinen and I can't eat the meat, but at least let me get a portion of the hide. Why should my tumah preclude me from getting the hide? And that's what those two extra words are teaching me. Lo yihiyeh, only the kohen who can do the avoda is entitled to get the hide, not anyone else. Now, the Tanakama nomi tepuk li midina. So that's the end of the brisa. So the Gemara now asks the question. So we've got three Tanoim. We've got the Tanakama, Rabbi Yishmael, and Rebbe. The Tanakama was of the opinion that a Kohen gets the hides of Kadshe Kadshim from the Psukim. Rabbi Shmuel learned it out from a Kal V'chomer. So the question is, why did the Tanakama need a pasuk if it's learned from a Kal V'chomer? Why do you need a pasuk? So the Gemara says that's not a problem because Milsa de Asya B'Kal V'chomer Tarch V'Kasav Lakra. Many times in Shas we find this, that sometimes the Torah will explicitly write things that could have been derived anyway from a Kal V'chomer, even if the Torah did not write it. So that's not a problem. The Rabbi Shmuel Hayasher Hikriv Mayavidle. So what does Rabbi Shmuel Taka do with those extra words that the Tanakama used to teach me that the Kohen gets the hide of Kadshe Kadshim? Those words Asher Hikriv are extraneous to him. What does he do with them? Prat Litvul Yom Mechusar Kippurim Va'onein. So he uses it for the very same thing that the Brisa ended with which is to tell me that not only does a Kohen who's Tameh or an Onein not partake of the meat of a carbon, but he also does not partake of the hide of a carbon. So the tepuk leimi lo yihiyah. Why doesn't he learn it out from the following, the last two words of the pasuk of lo yihiyah, just like the Tana of the Brisa did? So the Gemara answers Rabbi Shmuel l'taimei, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shmuel nemer ba'ola lo yihiyah v'nemer ba'asham lo yihiyah. Mala halan atzmosov mutar mafkan atzmosov mutarin. So he says, he learns those words lo yihiyah are needed to make a gzeira shava to the carbon asham for a totally different halacha, which is not to tell me that a Kohen who's Tameh or an Onein is not entitled to the hide, but rather to teach me a different halacha, that just like the Kohen is entitled to get the bones, the inedible bones of the carbon asham, as a personal, he can take it home with him, process the bones, make china ware out of it, he's entitled to do the same thing by the carbon ola. So let's say if you have very large bones that are not going to be burned on the mizbeach, and are not edible, he can take those bones and use them for personal use, just like he can take the hide. And how do I learn that? Because it says lo yihiyah by the ola and lo yihiyah by the asham, just like by the carbon asham, the Kohen is entitled to the bones, so too by the carbon ola, the Kohen is entitled to the bones. And that's why he needs the words lo yihiyah. So the Gemara says mufni, di ilo mufni ikala mifrach mala asham shekein b'saro mutter lo shekein b'saro mutter. So the Gemara says you have to argue that this is a gzeira shava that is relying on extraneous verbiage. Because we know there's a principle that we've seen many times in Shas. A gzeira shava is subject to logical scrutiny. If you can show that the two cases are dissimilar, then you can break the gzeira shava. But if the words are extraneous in the pasuk, so then it's no longer subject to logical scrutiny. Then the gzeira shava even overrides logical differentiations. So the Gemara says, because I could come up with a logical difference between a carbon asham and a carbon ola. Maybe the reason why a Kohen is entitled to the bones is because he's entitled to the meat, whereas by a carbon ola, he's not entitled to the meat, so maybe he shouldn't be entitled to the bones. So the Gemara says, mutar lo shekein b'saro mutar, period. So the Gemara says, you're right. Lo yihya kro yaserahu. You're right. The words lo yihya are completely extraneous, and therefore it is a gzeira shava that surpasses or sort of is impervious to logical differentiations. Let's go on to the next Mishnah. Kol hakodshim she'ira behen psul kodem lehev sheitan, ein oroseim lekohanim. La'achar hev sheitan oroseihen lekohanim. The Mishnah here seems to say something that is directly contradictory to the previous Mishnah. What did the previous Mishnah say? What's the rule? The rule is, as long as the meat is kosher for the carbon even for a moment, then the Kohen gets the hide. If the meat is not usable for the mizbeach, the Kohen does not get the hide. Here, the Mishnah gives a different criterion. It says if the carbon becomes puzzle before the hide is flayed, the Kohen does not get the hide. But if the hide is flayed before the carbon becomes puzzle, then the Kohen is entitled to the hide. It's mashma from here, just to give you the illustration of where there's a nafkamina between the two Mishnayos, is that, let's say, we flay the hide before Zrika Sadam. And then right after we flay the hide and before Zrika, something puzzle happens to this animal. It becomes tameh, or whatever happens, so we cannot place it on the Mizbeach. So it would be, according to this Mishnah, the Kohen would still get the hide. But according to the previous Mishnah, since it was never used, the meat could never go on the Mizbeach before Zrika, right? So then, after Zrika, so then the hide should not go to the Kohen. So this is a direct contradiction. The Gemara will address this momentarily. Amar Rabbi Chanina Skana Kohanim, miyomai lo ra'isi or sheyotze lebeis hasreifa. Rabbi Chanina says, I was alive in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. I was an assistant Kohen Gadol. And I never saw a case where the hide of a carbon ola had to be discarded because of a psul. It was always given to the Kohen. So he's basically arguing with the Tanakama. So Amar Rabbi Akiva midvarav lamadnu shahamafshid es habechor v'nimsa treifa sheyeosa kohanim ba'oro. So Rabbi Akiva says we can infer from here that even in a case where you shechted a bechor, where the meat belongs to the Kohen, and therefore the hide should belong to the Kohen as well, if you discover after shechita that the animal is treif, in which case it was puzzle long before the zrika, that nonetheless Rabbi Chanina holds that the Kohen still gets the hide. And v'chachamim omrim, ein lo ra'inu raya, ela yetzi lebeis hasreif. And the chachamim say, I'm sorry, Rabbi Chanina, you're not a credible witness. Just because you say, I never saw it, doesn't mean that it never happened. Because there are a lot of times, you weren't there 24/7 in the Beis HaMikdash. You were there during your shifts, and when you weren't there, it could have happened that an ola became puzzle and the hide did not go to the Kohanim. Just like, so therefore, lo ra'inu eino raya. Just because we believe you say you never saw it, it doesn't mean that that's the halacha. The Gemara now says, Kol shelo zacha hamizbeach b'visor lo zachu hakohanim ba'ora, v'afagav da'af shetei lo or kodem zrika. So let's go back to our previous Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that if the mizbeach cannot use the meat, the Kohen does not get the hide. That's what the previous Mishnah said. And that implies that even if you flayed the hide before Zrika and before the psul occurred, the Kohen still does not get the hide. So, Mani, Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon hi, da'amar ein hadam meratza al ha'or b'fnei atzma. This seems to go like Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon, who says that regardless of whether the hide is separated from the meat or not, if the meat is puzzle, the sprinkling of the blood cannot work independently just for the hide. In other words, basically the halacha is that if the meat was not usable for the mizbeach, the hide cannot be used for the Kohen. Period. End of story. Regardless of whether the hide was separated before the Zrika, was separated after Zrika. But Ema Seifa, now let's look at our Mishnah. Kol hakodshim shira ben psul kodem hev sheitan eina roseim lokohanim, lacher sheitan roseim lokohanim. Asan l'Rebbe da'amar hadam meratzelo or bifnei atzmo. Reisha Rebbe Elazar b'Reb Shimon Seifa Rebbe. So the problem is that that is directly contradicted by our Mishnah, which says that as long as the hide is separated from the meat before the psul occurs, even if it's before Zrika, even though the meat will not be usable for the Mizbeach, but the Kohen still gets the hide, which goes according to Rebbe, who says that when you sprinkle the blood on the Mizbeach, when you do Zrika, as long as the hide is separated from the meat, the hide now becomes kosher, so to speak, and it can be given to the Kohen. So this is a machlokas between Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, and Rebbe, which we'll see that machlokas tomorrow. But how can it be that the first part of the Mishnah goes like one Tana, and the second part of the Mishnah, a few lines later, goes like the other Tana? That doesn't make any sense. So we have two answers to this question. So, Amar Abaye, Midaseifa Rebbe, Haresha Nami Rebbe. He says, no, I have to conclude that this entire Mishnah goes like Rebbe, who holds that if at the time of Zrika, the hide and the meat are separated, then the hide is made kosher for the Kohanim, even though the meat is pasul. How are you going to reconcile it with the first Mishnah? Umoda Rebbe, Shein Hefshe Kodem Zrika. Because that previous Mishnah is speaking in what is common. Commonly, lechatchila, you're never supposed to flay the animal until after Zrika. So therefore, in almost every situation, practically speaking, since the Kohanim know that the protocol is you don't flay the animal before Zrika, once you do the Zrika and a psul occurred in the meat, since the meat and the hide are connected, then just like the meat becomes pasul and the Zrika will not work for the meat, it will not work for the hide as well. That's what the Mishnah means. But in a situation where the Kohen violated the standard protocol, and Hitaka separated the hide from the meat before it became pasul and before the Zrika, and then the psul happened, and then the Kohen did the Zrika, so then Taka, the hide, would be kosher for the Kohen. That's how Abaye interprets the contradiction. Rava Amar Midaresha Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon Seifa Nami Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon. Umay Koidem Hefshet, Umay Acher Hefshet, Kodem Sheniru Lahefshet, Achar Sheniru Lahefshet. And Rava says, I interpret it differently. I say, no, both Mishnayos go according to Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, who says very clearly that there's no such thing as a zrika that works only for the hide and doesn't work for the meat because the meat is already pasul. If the meat is pasul, then there's no such thing as doing independent zrika independently for the hide to make it kosher for the Kohanim. So what does our Mishnah mean when it says that the criterion is whether or not the hide was separated from the meat before the psul or after the psul? What it means is, I also agree that the protocol is first you do zrika and then you flay the hide. So what the Mishnah means simply is that if the time of flaying occurred, meaning that it's post zrika, so then if the hide had already been separated from before that point, from before zrika, so then the hide, and then only afterwards the psul took place after zrika, so then the hide goes to the Kohen because the meat was usable, at least for a moment. But if the psul occurred before the time of flaying, meaning before zrika, so then no matter what you do, whether it was separated or not before then, the hide does not go to the Kohen. So that's how he interprets it. But the bottom line is that if the meat is not usable for the mizbeach, so then, and generally speaking, the hide is attached to it at that point, so then the zrika will not work either for the meat, nor will it work for the hide. We'll elaborate on this machlokas between Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, and Rebbe in Mir Tzashem tomorrow. You all have a wonderful day. Rabbi Chanan ben Akasha.